everyone for joining us. My name is Sarah Walco. I'm the Director of Education and Community Engagement at the Visual Arts Center of New Jersey. And we're really thrilled to have these three teams of artists here with us tonight to discuss collaborative practice, their individual works and collaborative practice, and for the whole thing to be moderated also by our curator, Mary Birmingham. So just to give you a quick rundown of the evening, we're going to have each of the artist teams present their work for 5 to 10 minutes. And then Mary is going to engage them in a Q&A and dialogue for about 20 minutes. And then we're going to open questions up to the audience. You can all open your Q&A box down at the bottom of your screen, and I will be monitoring that the whole evening. So you can type your questions in as it goes, and you don't have to wait till the end, and we will definitely make sure they're seen and voiced. So Mary is going to actually introduce all of our artists tonight. So Mary, if you'd like to get started on introducing our first artist team.
Thanks, Sarah. We're so happy to be here with 6 really amazing artists. It's kind of like double the fun of the usual artist talk. With us tonight, we have 3 pairs of artist collaborators. Hillerbrand+Magsamen is the collaborative art practice of Mary Maximin and Stephan Hillerbrand, often with the participation of their children, Maddie and Emmett, with whom they share a home in the suburbs of Houston. DARNstudio is a collaboration between artists David Anthone and Ron Norsworthy, and they are based in Northwestern Connecticut. Ghost of a Dream is the collaboration between Adam Eckstrom and Lauren Waz, and they live and work in Wassaic, New York. So through the magic of Zoom, we're all here together. We decided to organize this panel specifically about collaboration because we found ourselves kind of at an interesting intersection of exhibitions and ideas about collaboration. The current exhibition, on view at the Visual Arts Center through January 17th, is a solo project by Hillerbrand+Magsamen called the Devices Project, and I'm sure they'll tell you more about that. And also opening February 6th is a group exhibition titled Decoding. The artists in this show all use source materials that carry some kind of cultural or political information, and their use of these materials encodes the new work with some of the original meaning. There are 11 artists in the show, including 2 collaborative practices. You guessed it, DARNstudio and Ghost of a Dream. So it's really been a kind of this perfect storm of collaboration. And I'm really delighted that we can all talk about this tonight. I'm gonna keep quiet now and let our artists tell you about their work, and then we'll have more of a chance to chat later. So we're gonna begin with Hillerbrand+Magsamen. So welcome, Mary and Stephan.
Hi, Mary.
Hi.
Thanks so much. Mary and I started collaborating actually right after graduate school, and our focus had always been kind of pointing the camera back at ourselves and looking at our relationship and the things around us. And then around 12 years ago, we moved to Houston, Texas. So we could do a next, I guess, with slide. Oh, next. Sorry, there's our house. And when we got there, this is North Houston. It's a suburban 1-story brick house. We had this kind of, we call it the talking heads moment of like, how did we end up here? And we really started to examine our family, our home, our community, and what we did. And then, as Mary said, very specifically, next. Our children and how this expanded collaboration possibly could work.
Next. So we thought we'd give a kind of a very brief overview of some previous projects. And this series is a series called Household. And what we were doing was kind of looking again at the materials in our home and using our home as a stage set and shooting ourselves interacting with stuff and our kids interacting with stuff, and kind of exploring this idea of the amount of stuff we have in our lives after having a couple kids. And so next, this is, oh, sorry, that one was titled Ophelia, and that's our son, Emmett. We titled all of these after either Shakespeare or mythological stories, because we were also interested in this mythology of the family. This is Perseus, and that's Stephan with our recycled bags. Next. That's our dog Penny, and that's called Cerberus.
Which he grabbed all that bread off of the counter. So it's all these pictures are sort of staged, but actually are coming from events.
Yeah. This is Sharon. So we dumped out all of Emmett's Legos and toys and had him be Sharon there. Next. And this is Sisyphus. That's me holding Madeline, our daughter, and a ginormous pile of laundry.
Next. After that series, we did a series called Family Portraits, and it was a 4-channel life-size video installation. And so each of these panels were, the figures in them were life-size, and it was representing each one of us in the family. There on the left-hand side is our son, Emmett, where over the course of about 4 minutes, he breaks 100 IKEA plates, one after another, you know, doing this task that normally children are forbidden, or you don't want them to break plates. Our daughter Madeline sinks into all of her stuffed animals as if it was quicksand, reemerges and then sinks again over a 10-minute period of sinking and growing. Mary is walling herself and then breaking the wall down, bricks and feathers. And then I'm sitting in the backyard with a sprinkler and a barbecue that's on fire, oblivious to putting out the fire and using the sprinkler. Next. And there's an installation of the panels hanging within the museum, the gallery space. Next. This is one of our favorite items. It's a 5-minute video called Hole. And what we did is we proceeded to cut every door, wall in every room of our house, a hole in it. And sort of like human habitrail, we, next. We tried to kind of escape, we wanted to create this kind of mythic, larger than life cinematic view of what our lives were like here in this suburban house. But we didn't go anywhere. We never escaped. We just kept tunneling over and over again for the entirety of the video piece. And for many years afterwards, we still had those holes. And Emmett and Madeline and the 4 of us did this together as a family. Next.
So this is a still from a film that we made called Higher Ground. And we were continuing this idea of creating mythologies and using stuff from our home. So what we did was we made a spaceship in our backyard.
Next.
This is the spaceship. And it's made all just out of doors and
garbage cans and Barbie's dream houses.
It was an ultimate recycling project. Next. And we made spacesuits, we made memorabilia. It really kind of took on a life of its own and became this very expansive project. Where in the video we go and we take off, and we used NASA footage, so there's a deep connection to Houston for this piece, and similarly to Hole, we don't really go anywhere. It's a bit of a futile attempt.
But in that process, all families went to escape and get away. We create this kind of new mythology, this new family story, collaborating together. Next.
And so then,
there we are. That's the cockpit. That's where that's our mission control inside the 3-story spaceship in our backyard. Next. There it is. That's our house again, and that's during Hurricane Harvey. This is a constant thing that's happening in Houston. Next. And everybody in Houston has these hurricane preparedness boxes or checklists. And we started thinking, especially in reference to our own work, and this is the devices project that Mary mentioned earlier, what could we do instead of having a flashlight or a good gallon of clean drinking water? What happens if we had devices or things in an emergency box that could heal a broken heart, or to get along with your boss, or to stop using so much screen time on your phone? Next.
So, and this is the work that is currently on view at the Visual Arts Center. And so we made this project. It's called 147 Devices for Integrated Principles. And it was a collaboration with two other artists as well, a playwright and a musician, both from Austin, Kirkland, and Peter Stopczynski. And so we were taking objects from our home, everyday things, and creating new things and transforming these everyday objects into devices. Next.
Oh, that was a device for transportation. Yes. This is a device to be heard. We created 147 devices, and then we did a performance over several nights, kind of explaining to the audience with the music by Peter, writing by the playwright Kirkland, how to use the devices.
Next. This is a device to forgive yourself for all the people you have wronged. That's our daughter.
Next. That's me, a device to talk to God. Next.
That's me. It's a device to forget. And in this one, we sewed into the print. So we also started embellishing the photographs in different ways. And there's quite a few. It's a big project. There's a lot of sculptures that go with it, and blankets and all this stuff too. But this was just a little snapshot.
Next. And this is our son Emmett with Scotch tape on the photograph, a device for interpolating confidence. Next. And this is a video still. As Mary said, there's lots of videos along that accompanied the performance and the exhibition at the, as Mary said, and this is sort of a Rube Goldberg mousetrap where we actually are showing people how to interact with them. So that's our work.
Wonderful, thank you both. Mary, would you like to introduce DARNstudio? Oh, you're on mute. Yeah.
Sorry, I think I'm going to let them introduce themselves. As I said, David Anthone and Ron Norsworthy are collaborating as DARNstudio, and I welcome their input as to what their practice is all about.
So, hi, everyone. We're really happy to be here. And thank you guys so much. That work is amazing. It makes us smile. It's so cool. So our collaboration is one of the foundational elements of our collaboration is the concept of re-meaning. And that's where we take basic things like really ordinary, pedantic things and untether them from their inherited or encoded meaning. And we do that in order to kind of complicate and open up what it's all about. Next slide. So one of the things that we are terribly interested in, especially with the project that David's going to tell you a little bit about soon, is the idea of nostalgia and sentimentality. And so one of the ways that that's conveyed, how that operates in society for us, is the idea of the souvenir matchbook, or the idea of a souvenir. And you can see even with these examples, which I just pulled off the internet, with just, I didn't even put in racist racist souvenirs. They just popped up because they're there. And but it just shows you how an innocuous item can be weaponized to reinforce white supremacy. Next slide. And the other thing that we were kind of enthralled with was the idea of the quilt, and the idea of an heirloom, and all the things that conveys. And when we start to unlock these words and meanings, we're thinking about like what their import is, how they travel through our culture, and how they get heavy with meaning. So you've got Betsy Ross here and a quilt. And again, in Googling these images, it's funny you put in the keyword, and I know that for me, personally, I don't think that I think of Betsy Ross when I think of a quilt, or I think of white grandmas when I think of a quilt. So it just goes to show you how these things can be racialized and genderized and all sorts of formed in ways that make us think about a thing in a certain kind of way. Next slide. So that led us to our project, Another Country, which David is going to tell you more about.
So we began our collaboration and this project called Another Country, which is kind of a homage to James Baldwin's work. Happens to be where we live up in Connecticut. He wrote part of Another Country. It's an idiom for like, what country do we live in? Is it another country? It's a reference to country craft and the quilting. We didn't approach this project with the attempt to make quilts. We're not quilters. But in early 2016, we began this investigation about, God knows why, making quilts out of matchbooks, souvenir matchbooks. And then that kind of evolved into picking up on what was happening in the world, in politics, with the killing of Alton Sterling and Philandro Castile and so many others, thousands of others that predate that, going back to Emmett Till and even predating that, the lynchings, the public lynchings. And how do we use this as a process to work through that trauma? So this is how we began looking at what is a series of 13 quilts that will complete this project, and they're based on the Underground Railroad. And the Underground Railroad quilts are kind of this oral history of, they were used as signposts. And oral history is really important here because it's a way to negate a person's history or a people's history. So over time, the oral history gets lost or it gets marginalized. It's not a real history. Those quilts were not really patterns to help runaways from the South to get to the North, but we picked up on that. So we said to ourselves, what if in today's time we needed to have quilts that gave kind of dog whistles to people to say, this is how you maneuver through society. This is what systemic racism is looking like. This is what we must do.
Or pay attention to this or do that.
Yeah.
And I think they're just kind of prompts in a way. And also for us, it was, and I'm sure this will come up later in Mary's questions, but this project was a way for us, we each had our independent practices. So to be able to come together as artists, this work represents conversations that we had. They're actually manifested conversations that take a physical form. And as a white man and a Black man in a relationship, how both an artistic collaboration, but also a personal relationship, an intimate relationship, how were we going to navigate these issues?
Yeah, so real quick here, this piece that you're seeing, which was in Wassaic, New York, is called Amplify. It features Philandro Castile as the red Amplify symbol, and it's the power of how we use symbols as emojis to convey very complicated messages, and Eric Gardner is in this piece too. But it's how recording devices are now used in the moment to spread what is happening to millions of people internationally, whereas during Jim Crow and the lynchings, they used postcards. And it was a little bit slower, but they still got the message out. Now we're doing much more rapidly and news is much more quick. So next slide. And what's important about the Souvenir Matchbook is matchbooks were invented in America. They're as ubiquitous as the record or the you know, all these things that have gone by the wayside, but these were so common as you traveled, as you went to a restaurant, as you left the restaurant, you grabbed a matchbook, a motel, you grabbed the matchbook. And it was a way to remind you of a memorable, positive moment. They were little memorials. And what we flipped that with a new re-meaning. What if these were memorials, but not in such a positive way, but in a way that we needed to remember? You know, we have amnesia in this country, so we need these to remember and have a dialogue about what has happened.
And to tell,
So real quickly, so you could walk by Bay Beauty Supply in Staten Island and never know that Eric Gardner was choked there. And on the back side of the matchbook is Eric Gardner's alphanumeric code of the day he died. But this is what's so common is thousands of killings every year, and we walk by and not even remember what the tragedy was. So in this case, this is Bay Beauty Supply.
and I think something about our project that we'd like to note here is that we use both the fronts and the backs of the matchbooks in our quilts. And what we're doing is telling a story of systemic racism. We're letting the audience know with a wink that these are not isolated incidents, that they are actually connected and part of a pattern. And so as the matchbooks are literally sewn together to tell this story of systemic racism. So, you know, the audience does need to do a bit of work when they're looking at our work. They spend some time with it, or they could not spend time with it, but the more time you spend, the more you get out of it.
Yeah, and the main driver with our work, or at least in my practice, I think in this project is, can you make something beautiful to draw on somebody who doesn't want to have that conversation about racism? Can you draw them in with a device and then unpack that? And it does it on a large scale with, we hope, the beauty of the quilts, and it does it on a small scale with something as innocent as a matchbook. Next slide. And so we just go on. And so Ron and he'll talk more about how we collaborate. But unfortunately, because thousands of people are getting killed every year and there's no end in sight, we have to have a discussion about who do we want to represent, you know, in this project, in this next quilt. The orange matchbook, Laquan McDonald, we got Nia Wilson and Bart and Oscar Grant, and it goes on at Terrence Crutcher. So as we are working through the process of envisioning the next quilt, we're also using this as a cathartic way to heal. Yeah. And every time I look at these, I'm thinking about what happened there in Oklahoma, in Missouri, with Trayvon Martin, and the stories are complicated, but they're not really. They're really very simple. It's about systemic racism.
So I think something that we kind of forgot to tell everyone about is that our quilts tell the stories of people that have been killed by law enforcement, people of color that have been killed by law enforcement. And sometimes in the case of Trayvon Martin, extrajudiciously by a night watchman, George Zimmerman. So, you know, I think that it's important to know that we're talking about systemic racism, and we are using the matchbooks and the form of the quilt to, I think, to tell a more expansive and inclusive history. Yeah. And perhaps an inconvenient history as well, which is why it's been erased and it's uncomfortable for a lot of people.
I'm always interested in, like, I'm learning through this process as a white person who grew up with no Black people in Nebraska. I'm relearning my history, and it makes me a little angry that the history we learned was so skewed. Whose monuments, who's telling the story, whose history, and it's ever so subtle. But once you pick up on that, you see it in everything. So next slide. So this is a study, and Ron, again, we'll talk about, you know, this more, but this is a smaller quilt. We're doing a study here for a new pattern we're excited about. It's called Cakewalk, and it's the fancy dance from pre-Civil War that then migrated into minstrel shows and ragtime. This is where ragtime comes from, and jazz. Minstrels were the biggest form of entertainment in this country, and they evolved into some form of entertainment we have now. But we love this idea of taking something so innocent as the term cakewalk, like it's a piece of cake, or that Catholic fair where you did something and you won a cake. It all comes from this place, and that's what we like to unpack and investigate.
And play with.
This is it, and it's a series of, you know, simple cakes. That's the idea of a quilt, to dumb it down. That's the idea of a symbol, to make it super simple, and to then unpack it and have anybody who views it come up with their own meaning for what they see. Next slide. And this is an installation view of some of our quilts from, we're about halfway through the series of 13. So real quick, this is in Mosaic. So we have New Shoe Fly, and Shoe Fly, that's the one on the left, the one hanging. That is the only pattern that we picked up on directly from Underground Railroad. That is a real quilt pattern, Shoe Fly. But then listening to a story of Michael Brown's mother, and the only thing she really remembers about the event is the yellow and black caution tape, that when she went to the site and saw where her son had been lying for 3 hours with no attention. So that's where we interrupted New Shoe Fly and with New Shoe Fly, and added the caution tape, which is to us really powerful and, you know, has deep meaning. And real quick on the right is Go High. That's a reference to Michelle Obama. When they go low, we go high, a series of interconnected Escher-esque ladders. And then in the background, what we do is, after we introduce new quilts, the new quilts are hanging. And if we've shown the quilt before, we turn it into a sculptural form. So in the background is Snake in the Grass, Snake in the Garden. I always call it Snake in the Grass. And Ron will talk to you more about how we collaborate together, which is a complicated process, to get to these pieces.
So real quickly, the next slide, please. So this is how Snake in the Garden began, with this ubiquitous image that's all over the internet, and also attributed to no artist in particular. It's, you know, we thought we'd start with original sin and what the idea of original sin means, and how that's loaded, and unpack it. And if we look at it through the lens of systemic racism and white supremacy, how does that look? Next slide, please. So because of the way that we work, we have to kind of break things apart. So we create logs, and once the pattern is sketched out, we then create a work schedule and a worksheet where we can work on parts of the quilt of the project individually, and notate what we've done, what section of the quilt has been created, and put it in the log. Next slide. So you'll see this pattern, Snake in the Garden, is broken into an A, B, C, D pattern. And they're numbered. So you've got A9, C5, B10, C13, so forth. So that's how we keep from replicating each other's work and staying out of each other's hair.
So real quick, each quilt is, they're about 8 feet by 8 feet. They each require about 2,800 matches. Ron and I stitch all of that. We want to feel the pain.
Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And this is the quilt coming together. And then finally, and also this is kind of to give you a sense of the scale of the piece. But we want to say that our process is one that's full of tension. And it's really important to note that we think, and especially this year has shown us, that through conflict you can actually find ways forward and find new solutions where when things are kind of normal and everybody's happy, maybe nothing happens. So I think that our process mirrors what's happening in the world a little bit, because we come from such different backgrounds, such different lived experiences, that working together, especially as a couple, and the roles aren't so clearly defined, that we literally are making up our process as we go. And so thank you so much for letting us share.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to see how Ghost of a Dream works.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, guys. So next we'll have Lauren Was and Adam Eckstrom. If you guys could inform us of your practice. And once again, just let me know when to forward the images.
All right. Hi, everyone. So amazing to see all these collaborators.
Yeah. I'm Adam.
And I'm Lauren, and we're Ghost of a Dream.
And the reason we call ourselves Ghost of a Dream is we have a few rules with our work. And the main rule is we make all our work about people's hopes and dreams out of the ephemera people create trying to attain those hopes and dreams. And for this talk in particular, since the panel is about collaborative practices, we thought we would throw in images of projects where we didn't just collaborate with one another, but in almost all of them, we collaborated with people outside ourselves.
Next slide.
Beep.
So this is one of the first projects Adam and I did together, and it is a Hummer H3 made out of $39,000 worth of losing lottery tickets.
Which is how much the Hummer cost that year in 2009.
And so we were living in Brooklyn, and we were a new couple, and every time we walked down the street, we'd see just like all of these scratch off tickets everywhere we looked, all over the ground. And we started picking them up and collecting them and thinking about what they meant, how each one held basically a signature by the way different people scratched, and how each one represented a lost dream, that each thing was, a desire for something. So as we first started working together, we started thinking about what people wanted when they won the lottery. And so we built this project working with our first project, working with 10 students at RISD, which was interesting to collaborate for the first time and also have an audience / participants to helping us.
We learned to collaborate on that. There was a moment where Lauren yelled at me, "You need to think like a sculptor."
So yeah, it's not always graceful, but
Beep.
Next slide.
The reason we call ourselves Ghost of a Dream is because we had called this project Ghost of a Dream, and it's kind of a perfect analogy for ourselves. Yes, this object is just a big hollow object.
It's a shell of an object. It's a ghost of something. It's a ghost of a dream. It's all the desires that these people wanted when they were scratching. And so after this exhibition, we decided to keep that name, thinking that we would continue working in our own practices, but the collaborative really stuck with us, and we decided to keep that as our moniker.
Beep. So we're thinking, like, while we were working with all these lottery ticket projects, we started collecting other materials, and we started thinking about, as artists, what was like our lottery ticket. And we thought about it, it's the artist postcard. It was this thing that really people don't use anymore, but you give it to all the curators and everybody you see, and you think it's going to get you the next biggest show. And anyhow, and then it becomes detritus or trash as soon as your exhibition is done.
Then you have piles and piles of them sitting around.
So we were in we were asked to be in a large group exhibition. So what we did is we wrote to all the other artists in the exhibition and asked if they would send us a pile of their artist postcards that are no longer good anymore. And then we took images from all the other artists in that group show and made this piece to be in the show itself.
And so it was kind of interesting to see as people came to see the show, to see them recognize their work within it. Another thing I think that's important within our work is that we never print material, that all this material actually had a life before, that these were all actually like in somebody's hands at one point.
We see everything as like having an energy to it, like people put their hopes or disappointments or whatever it is into that actual material, and then that material lives on through our work.
Yeah.
Beep.
And this is an exhibition that we did in collaboration with the artist Jennifer Dalton. And we also see it as a collaboration with the participants that come to see the show. This is called Statistics of Hope. The exhibition is called Statistics of Hope. And it was an exploration of themes of chance, risk, truth, and hope, and through an interactive gaming show. So participants were invited to come and play different games.
Like on the right here is a series of 3 drawings. We didn't put it in detail, but it's a series of 3 drawings about death. So it's a pie chart showing the statistics of death and
how you will die.
How you die. And so the drawing on the left, you're invited to throw a dart to figure out how you'll die. The drawing in the middle, you spin a spinner to figure out how you'll die. And the third one is just a frame drawing, so you contemplate how you will die.
So each of the different sort of stations in the show are ways that viewers can physically experience their odds of something hopeful or negative happening to them. Next slide. So this is a main part of the exhibition. It's a giant interactive gaming table. The 3 sort of circular spinners, and one of them you can spin to see your chances of having an orgasm if you're a woman, if you're a man, if you're a same-sex couple. And there's another, the middle one I believe is your chances of your art being on display if it's owned in a private collection or if it's owned in a museum. And
the third one is just about self-happiness.
Yeah.
And there's a piggy bank. You can ask a financial question. You turn it over.
It's like a magic 8 ball that you.
And there's dice you can throw that tell you your odds of being a millionaire, depending on race, proximity to a city, and nationality.
Nationality, where you live, which country you live in. And then there's another dice that you can roll. There's another dice you can roll to see your chances of living to 100 based on what year you were born.
And the shuffleboard is a month in an artist's life. So you play to see how your career is going to go that month.
And then the carpet is all made out of casino carpets that were sourced from Atlantic City, and it's made to sort of feel like this big giant pie chart.
They were taken out of the bankrupt Trump Plaza Casino. So if we go to the next slide, we also collected a number of lamps from that casino, and then we put little dials so you could turn the light up or down depending on how you felt or agreed with the.
And there's probably about 15 lamps. Yep. And this first one asks, does it make you uncomfortable that this lamp came from the president's bankrupt casino? And so you could turn the lamp up or down based on how uncomfortable you are. There's other ones that ask about democracy, your love life, all sorts of different things in different varieties of seriousness too. So there's a lot of play and then a lot of like sort of heavy hitting questions.
Beep.
Beep.
This is a project that is up right now. It opened up in February. It's at Mass Art Museum. It's a museum in Boston that just Mass Art just opened. In that same building, there were 2 galleries for 30 years, the Payne and Backlar galleries. And so we took 30 years of the Payne and Backlar's catalogs to collage the lobby of the new museum.
And so for us, we were thinking that this piece was, a look back at their history, but also all of these new possibilities that were going to happen in this space.
And using the images of the artists that had shown in this building.
Shown and made the place what it was.
Yeah.
And so it sort of began, the piece is meant to like usher you through their past and into their future. And
this next slide is just a detail to show how small we work. You know, when you look at when you're backed up, you can't really tell how, I don't know, how detail oriented it is. These are like 1/2-inch pieces, and they're actually kind of big compared to a lot of our collage. And the bottom, sorry, you wanted to talk about slide.
That's great. The bottom is all different, is all book covers from one of the exhibition catalogs that we use, sort of shingling it. But all of our pieces, we're using color and pattern to create these lines. Yeah.
And in all of our work, I think DARNstudio talked about this in their own work too, is we want people to see kind of a beauty from a distance and people to approach and the work to unfold itself and kind of start a conversation with people that may have not approached the work if they knew what it was about.
Yeah, and I think that another thing to note, since we're gonna show the next slide really sort of changes gears, is that we've really let our process or let the materials guide us and sort of let us go in all sorts of different directions. A lot of times our work looks very different from each other, but we've really like tried to embrace that, letting media determine,
letting the collection decide what the piece and the end work looks like.
Yeah.
So this is a piece, this image and the next image are to talk about a piece we're currently working on, but this is a piece that takes sunset images from 7 travel ban countries in 2017. It started as a still image, and then we asked artists in those countries to shoot a video of the sunset, and then did the same thing aligning it by the sun.
So I think starting in 2016, we were so alarmed with what was happening in our country, and then you know, when Trump put in place the idea of a travel ban, we just felt like a real passionate need to sort of address that somehow, to sort of make a connection with artists in those places. And so this was like a beginning step where we were trying to reach out to artists in each of those countries to get the one thing that we all see, which is the sunset.
The next image is sunsets, again, from the 30 countries that are most affected by DACA. So I guess the top 30 countries of people in DACA in the US.
Yeah.
So we went through the same process, and after doing these two, and then the onset of the pandemic and our past 4 years of psychological trauma, we really felt like we had to bring this a lot further, and maybe in a sense of positivity and just bring everybody together in a way. And so now our current project is we're collecting, we're attempting to collect videos from one artist in every country in the world, and then make this 200+ video installation
where we're going to do it in a couple different ways, but we'd like to have projections of the sun setting in over 200 countries at the same time.
Countries, nations, and territories.
Yeah. So we envision it as a way of one, getting to meet artists all over the world and bringing everyone together to have this like massive, I don't know, I feel like it's going to be powerful and bright and a way of connecting in this time of separateness. Was that the last one?
I think it is.
Okay.
Thank you. That's so great. And that's, I think, a really nice jumping off point too, is this idea of collaboration is really one of generosity, and both within a relationship, and also when you extend that outward. And I feel like we've all been sequestered in our homes, and I think we're all kind of thirsty for that way to reach out and touch other people and to feel connected with other people. So I think there's a larger something larger going on here besides just the collaboration between artists. So I think that's really beautiful. Interestingly enough, something that I saw on David and Ron's website, they had a kind of a general statement that I think really applies to everything we've been talking about tonight. And that is, our goal is to cast the familiar in an unexpected context so that it can be seen in an unfamiliar and new way. And I think the thing that tickles my fancy about all of your work so much is the idea that you make these incredible objects and ideas out of the stuff of everyday life. I met Stephan in Houston in a gallery. We just struck up a random conversation, and he happened to have a show, but I was so taken by the work that, we kind of developed this working relationship. But one thing that really engaged me with that work, and with all of your work, is that I love how you all title the work. That I think that in the way that the works are titled, they really invite at least the mental and visual participation of the viewer. That, if it's a quilt pattern, we all have things that we relate those titles to. And I think Lauren and Adam, you have sometimes these incredibly long titles. Can you just refresh my memory on how you do that?
We're often taking our titles from song lyrics.
Yeah.
Song lyrics are book titles.
And for us, I don't know, we listen to music constantly, and it's something that's going through our head always. And so and it's poetry, so we're just looking at songs and letting that guide us in a way.
Or stealing other people's poetry.
And Mary and Stephan, I think that's certainly one of the most compelling parts of this body of work with the devices, the titles. And I think that they make us, as we all said before, they really make us smile. But there's something a little poignant in that smiling, because don't we really all want to be forgiven, or we want to figure out how to forgive people? So when it's somebody with, a mass of cotton batting around their head, there's something that is funny about that, but it's also very touching and very human. And so that's just, one thing. And I wonder, is that part of the fact that you're all collaborating because you're collaborating on the content? Is there something expansive about titling, or how does that happen for any of you?
You guys all argue about it?
I said, Mary, can I answer the question, please? The devices project is really special to us because, as we said, Mary said, we were collaborating with our longtime friend and collaborator. We collaborated with Kirkland, this playwright, for many years. And we had this idea, and we were kind of working on it already. And we reached out to him and we said, this is the idea. We would like you to help and collaborate and work and write the play and the performance, and also help, maybe create a title. And he responded back. He texted a couple days later and goes, I have this title, 147 Devices for Integrated Principles. And we were like, oh my God, does that mean we have to do 147? And he says, yes. And
we ended up making like over 200.
Over 200. But there's this wonderful, over a period of about a year, there was this call and response where we would send him an image and he says, okay, here's a title. And then we would say, no, that's not a good title. And we would write another title back, and he would come back and say, well, then that title has to have, like you said, a trash can in it. And so it was this really, the only way I can describe it is like a call and response, as if we were singing back and forth in real time and visually.
Some of the titles we would come up with. Or one time we were stuck. We were like, oh, like we don't know what to title this piece, and so we said, hey, Emmett, can you what is something you would like a device for right now? And he looked at us exasperated and said, to get you to leave me alone. We were like, oh, that's great. And he was like frustrated that we thought it was funny.
and we wrote it
and
down.
our daughter said, Maddie said, get into college. So we've reached out to them sometimes to ask for some names of pieces as well.
Or many times Emmett and not with the titling, but with the work itself, they come into the studio and they would look at something and they say, is it finished? And we're like, no, we don't know what we're doing. And they start making stuff and they start clicking the shutter. And then we would send that out or try to figure it out.
You know, it's I think we've mentioned the fact that you guys are all artistic collaborators, but you're also romantic partners, each couple. And Stephan and Mary, you have 2 children, and Lauren and Adam, you have a child who. What's kind of interesting to me is that I think that you guys in Houston kind of, it was almost like a zone defense thing where you had to kind of let them into the practice, or otherwise it's divide and conquer. And as your kids have gotten older, I'm sure their enthusiasm has waxed and waned and has been at different levels, as we all know, living with teenagers. But I'm just curious, Adam and Lauren, with having being the parents of a young daughter, do you ever see any role for her in what you do, or where will she ever fit into this, or is that totally separate?
Definitely going to be our unpaid labor sorting.
She's on track to work. She organizes and helps cut some stuff.
I mean, right now she's only 4, so a lot of it is just giving her, busy work, little jobs. But I don't know, I hope. It wasn't what when I was pregnant, I thought, I'll be able to spend hours in the studio, and when she's a baby and she's going to love it. And of course she hated it. Before she even knew what a studio was, she thought it was a terrible place. So,
but now she's
and now we have a mess, we have a little messy section for her to just do whatever she wants.
The first thing you see is her, that's her studio section.
Yeah. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, she likes to go to all the artist talks at Wasaic Project.
She's a performer. She likes performance.
Yeah.
She really likes performance and dance.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens.
Can't bug her during a performance.
You may be actually making a stage set for her. I think that something that people are fascinated by probably is the idea of who does what. And I think that, Ron, you and David, correct me if I'm wrong, that you kind of come up with the idea together and then you kind of divide the work. Are you doing the same work in parallel and then joining it together, or do you have different roles?
Well, I think it's sort of like,
Yes.
I'm going to say yes, we have different roles. But to pick up on something that Stephan was saying, is that what's great about having more than one person is that the work can be iterative in this really expansive kind of way, right? So I think that where I stall out, he's got the ideas. Where he stalls out, I've got the ideas. So like the stuckness is not as much of an issue as it might be for an individual artist. So I think that that's what's really wonderful about being in a collaboration. I think that the thing that is for me personally most frustrating is our very, very different ways of working. So the division of labor and the dividing of the project actually makes for like a Switzerland kind of situation where the work is neutral and we can like duke it out. But when we come to the work, when we come to the base of the work, that's safe space. So whatever it is that you need to say, you can say it. There's no guarantee it's going to be well received at whatsoever. and the best idea kind of wins, you know. And I don't know if it's gendered, if this is sort of like a two guys sort of thing where we're very competitive, but I also think that our natural abilities have allowed us to carve out our own space within the collaboration. So I'm great with the computer stuff, and he's really good with the names. My God, it's amazing. Like,
and I'm a very fast stitcher
and
just quick.
And
I'm a natural.
Who
knew?
But that's with another country, with other projects. What's interesting, I think, is that we're very fluid, and so where I might be lacking in something, he's really strong, and then vice versa, and we seem to be able to fill in all of the areas that need to be filled in the project, and there's no ego with who. I mean, we kind of forget whose idea it was. I remember in the beginning when we first started, it was kind of weird, and we were strange with each other because it's like, that was my idea. We were very territorial about our property and what we brought.
But you know,
right?
We know now that spark, which we get excited about, is just the tip. That's just the beginning. So we need to run with it. What's really nice is, like, I have another brain over here. I don't know what it's doing and what it's going to say, but that's the art process. Like, you don't know where it's going to end up. And it's really fun. And I'm sure the other two couples will talk about this. It's really fun just having fun with it and exploring, like, where is this going? Even though our topic, like with another country, we don't always work in trauma, but even in that, which is a very dark place, can be spiritual and fun. Like, it is fun process working through it. It's just a very tragic topic.
Can do either of you want to comment on that idea?
I wanted to say, because what you were just saying, absolutely, I thought that you were talking using my words or something.
Yeah, I was like,
it was exactly it. And I think we are.
And we have a dog named Penny.
And we have a dog named Penny too.
No way.
Yeah.
See, I knew it. There it is. I think we're taught, or at least I was taught, like, you know, the artist is supposed to be this singular person in the studio by themselves, you know, and having all of the control. And there was that really light bulb moment, as you were talking about, when you're like, wait a minute, there can be multiple copies and multiple versions, multiple expertises. Somebody can be really good at something, and that's all right to kind of say, you know, I'm not good at that. And that's really, for us artists, I think that's really hard. And it does resonate a lot that when you give up that control and you start seeing it as this really energetic process, it's really very exciting. And I noticed too, it was so exciting to hear everybody's talk, because it seems people who understand this process, this collaborative process, then reach out to others, not only, you know, not a team, but just like thinking about a community.
More the merrier.
Who's surrounding them. It seems to embrace a larger picture, which I like a lot.
It could be, I'm thinking specifically about what Lauren and Adam are doing, reaching out to other artists. I just wonder if you all learned something that the rest of us don't know, that it's not so scary to kind of throw your lot in with someone else in a creative way, it's really a much more expansive and less limiting practice. And I'm wondering, you know, if maybe that's,
but it's totally scary. That's the thing. It's totally scary. And I think that most people aren't willing to, and I just want to say this really quickly, but like, I think that most people, let alone artists and all that ego stuff that goes along with being an artist and what one's self-image is. But I think that if you could lean into the discomfort of the tension, actually something really beautiful comes and the tension sort of dissipates and you kind of get comfortable with it. But if you're not willing to go into that space, there's a lot of potential in that space that we're all uncomfortable initially embarking upon.
What I think is really, I don't know, one of the best qualities of collaborating, and especially collaborating with your lover, is like, in comparison to studio visits, like you're never more honest with anybody than you are with your lover, right? Like to a fault, right? Like we would criticize more than we should, right? And we do that in the studio. And the best part about that is you get the best criticism, and it makes the work stronger. Like you're saying, the work is neutral, so you can both talk about it. You can talk poorly about it, and it just makes each other make the idea stronger. Like quite often I bring an idea to Lauren and she's like, that's crap. And it makes me have to strengthen the idea. And then, you know,
don't ever just say that's crap. I say a lot more than it's crap.
Yeah, a lot more constructively, and a lot more painful. But like it makes me fight for it, right? And we do it the other way too.
Yeah, but I also think that it helps move things along to make things happen faster too, you know, in a way
not
that
just internal debate.
Yeah, if I was just working alone in the studio, or there's been times where, like, you know, he's gone for the day or I'm gone for the day, where it's like, everything feels like I'm moving through mud, and then one of us gets back and it's like, oh yes, this is how it's all supposed to look.
But it allows us the time. It's not the difference with a crit is like you invite somebody into your space. There's pressure on both ends that they need to give you feedback, and then they're gone. And good and bad is like we live with it 24/7. Like I may not come up with the witty response or the answer to the solution until 2 days later when I wake up at 5 in the morning, and then it dawns on me, or I dream about it. And then I get to share it with my art partner who's lying next to me.
Yeah.
And then we begin the day. Our day is constantly art.
Yeah.
We wake up and we're like,
we're totally immersed. We're totally immersed in it. And I think especially with Another Country, the project that we shared with everyone, like we're not just making art about it, it's also on the news. It's also in the world that we live in. So if we're not talking, and I think that's how it became, I think it's how it became a work for us, because we were talking about it so much, and full transparency, fighting about it quite a bit as well. And me frustrated, David frustrated that we weren't able to kind of understand the pain that the other one was feeling exactly, or the helplessness that David was feeling, or the pain that I was feeling from these horrible traumas and tragic events. I think that being able to use the work as a medium, and then within that to be able to create a language that was not my language, that's not David's language, but it's a language that we invented. It's a vocabulary that we came up with. That's the product of nothing but nonstop, full court press immersion in the project, which is, I mean, it's frustrating because you're like, it's the oxygen, but you can't escape it, but it's also very rewarding and fulfilling at the same time. And nothing that I could do by myself, nothing that he could do by himself would be nearly as rich as what we've created together.
That 24-hour, again, it's as if you're just preaching to the choir.
I mean, especially you all, right? Especially.
A couple of years ago, Mary and I, we were going to bed, and we were in the bathroom, we were brushing our teeth, and I was feeling really sad for some reason, because we were in that kind of intense moment. And I stopped and I looked over to Mary and I said, Mary, I feel like we don't spend enough time together. We're growing apart. And she just stops and drops everything. And she looks over and she says, oh my goodness, we have kids together, we have dogs together, a cat, we work together, we teach together. She went down this whole list of like, we don't need more time
Oh, I
together.
said, I need time away from you.
Time away.
I need to re-energize my battery. I need time away from you. And it was one of those, yeah, it's both that joyous thing of being really intense and like you said, waking up and going, I have a good comeback for the work. And then all kind of then being exhausted after the process of like, wow, that was, relationship, life, practice, intense, and let's now do it again.
Well, I wonder, I was listening, there was this news report about how you're actually different people in different environments. Like Ron always says, why do you talk that way to your colleagues? You're so like fair and polite. I'm like, I don't know. I just, because I have this day job with the government and that's what I do. And I'm very bureaucratic that way. But then I realized maybe it's complicated when we have multiple relationships with our partner. Like we have a business relationship, we have a love relationship, you have children, like, and maybe we talk differently in those scenarios. And like you were saying, we need to spend more time together. Maybe it's that romantic time or that time that made you fall in love, and not the art partnership time.
Hey, Lauren, when I visited your studio, I think we talked a little bit about rules, how you separate. Does that ring a bell? Yeah. I think so. Can you just tell me a little bit again about how, like, are there any lines that you set where you say, okay, the work isn't gonna infiltrate this, or the personal isn't gonna infiltrate, or is it impossible?
It's impossible. We keep saying we have rules.
We used to have a no talking about art in bed rule.
Yeah, but that doesn't work. Because then you have a good idea, or you like, it just doesn't work. There's no getting away from it. And I think that's also fine. I think we all have to like learn to be flexible with each other. I maybe like right as I'm falling asleep, don't say something to me about like the problem we're having in the studio. That's a good rule, but it doesn't.
But I break that all the time.
But it's
we even suck in our dinner guests, and I can see you two do too. Whoever you're talking to, you're incubating an idea and how you can suck them in. It's like we do that too.
We just house guests down the driveway to get them back at our studio the other day.
Yeah, or Sunday.
Yeah, we're like, come back, you need to look at this thing.
One of the interesting things is though that we're looking at success stories here. I'm sure there are lots of people who try this, and probably quite a few that we never hear about. But it's so great to see people who actually make it work, because it has to be challenging, but you're making such rich and amazing work that is so relatable on so many levels. And I don't know if that's just because you're all brilliant artists, or if it's a product of the collaboration, but whatever you're doing is working.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it comes across as a lot of hard work too. Mary, we had one interesting question from the audience. It was from Elizabeth Duffy, that she had a number of questions, but they mostly got answered. But one that wasn't answered was, how does collaborating affect all of your individual practices? And do you each have individual practices at this point?
We try, but it doesn't. No, but it's sort of, the collaboration's bigger than everything else, and it wins out. I think like Adam does a lot of curating.
Yeah, my individual practice is I run a arts organization called Art for Artists, but in the studio.
Yay!
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So in our like, at least for me, I've always investigated these ideas. I feel like I'm a little incubator, and then I'm always tinkering around with some ideas. And then Ron, if he likes it, he'll begin to talk to me about it, and maybe it morphs over into a bigger group project here. Yeah, but I think the time, there's only limited time in the day. So right now it's DARNstudio.
And I think, okay, so opposites, but I have a sort of different take on that. And I think that my practice, I'm doing a residency right now at Project for Empty Space. And so carving out that time and creating the boundary around that allows me to pursue the ideas that don't really work for what Darn's about. They work for what I'm about, right? And so what I find is that let's put just juggling time management aside, because that's problematic. But when it's working, it works really well. And what I find is that my ability to not have to bring my entire self to Darn lets me bring my best contribution, my best self to Darn, and then I can bring my best self to my individual practice, if that makes any sense. So I think that whereas, and this is a really touchy thing, but I think with every couple, you're always navigating trust. I think you're always navigating, am I safe? Am I safe working on this with you? Is this an open, does this feel, are we bringing like emotional things into this that are clouding what the work could be? So, and especially because we're all intimate relationships. So, you know, I think that having that thing that's just mine, like Mary was saying, like I need time away. I need time to just like do my thing with me, for me, allows me to be really awesome when I'm part of Darn.
And let me ask you guys this question. Like when I'm working on an idea, I don't want any input. I want to be like a child. I just want to, I don't even care if it looks, I don't care what it looks like. I just want to get it out of me. And sometimes I don't like having that partner say, well, why don't you do this? Or well, we could tweak it this way. It's like, no, I just want to bang it out so I can stare at it and put it away for a couple years. Maybe it'll come back to me.
If we want to have an epic war, this is the stage set up for the epic war. So David says, I have an idea. And I'm like, oh my God, that's great. Tell me. And he tells me the idea. And I'm like, that won't work. That's stupid. Da-da-da. And I literally shoot it full of holes. And these are logistic holes. These are not on the merit of the idea. I like it enough to give my feedback. I want to say that. But you want to see the rest of the day where we have to go to opposite ends of the house. That's the setup for that day.
We don't do our own individual things. We usually, you know, we both have jobs too, and so for our art practice we only collaborate together. But what we do is we call it the 24-hour rule, where we can't tell each other an idea for at least 24 hours because we don't want to engage in that shooting down process. And if the idea will stick for 24 hours in our head and we're still like, okay, I still like this idea 24 hours later, then we have permission to tell each other. But we have to like suppress it for a little bit and make sure it's going to stick before we engage the other.
Because it does happen.
Because then we get into too many fights.
There's this kind of like, you know, that's not technically going to work, or, you know, there's something that comes up and you can see the face on the other person.
Or just the other person going,
oh, I crushed you, or
Such a Debbie Downer.
It's a downer. I can't, but the thing is, I can't help it. Like I'm details. Like I'm all about details. And I think in a former iteration where I used to be a set designer, and I couldn't present an idea to a client that I couldn't execute with the resources that I was given. And so I think some of that professional training has eaten into our relationship. And I think that what I'm learning, and I hope that we're always learning from each other, but what I'm learning from David is that sometimes an idea gets to just be an idea. It just gets to be this crazy, fantastic thing that doesn't have to be resolved. It doesn't have to be fully baked. It could be half baked. It could be completely unbaked. And it's okay. It's actually quite beautiful. And I think that that's the thing that it doesn't come out that way, but I think that's what my eagerness is, to hear his ideas, because they are so kind of, I'm doing this with my hands. They're so kind of ethereal, like they don't have any form or boundary or contour to them. They are unformed, and I think that that's what makes them really kind of poetic and beautiful.
I like the idea of almost, it's not just Ron, but it's other people. If Ron says, oh, gives me all kinds of reasons why the idea won't work, I know it's a great idea. I know it's an idea that needs to be explored because it's so something he's never entertained before.
But don't those ideas get better?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
they do.
because
Absolutely.
what? Because I run them through the test. That's why. They get tested, and they do get better. Of course they get better, but that's what I was saying before, that it's so exciting to hear the purest expression of the idea. And I think that what I have to do is just sort of shut my mouth and just let it come out in its kind of half-baked way, and just let it fill up the space, and just let it be. And before I start like turning it into something that's going to be on our project list of things we are going to execute.
Adam just made something in the studio that he's been asking to make for 3 years, and I keep saying
Finally, I had to make it.
He just made it, and I'm still not sure.
Good.
He might yeah, I don't know, but
So that might be outside the practice. That might have a solo piece.
I don't know. Yeah, we'll have to see.
We have in our house, we call it the solo album. If we get really angry at each other, then one of us will go, that's it, I'm going off to make my solo album. And like a musical reference, as you guys said. And we know that's the safe word or whatever. We have to dial it back. We have to give the other person a little bit of space and say, okay,
you go do your solo.
Don't break up the band. No, we never have. We haven't done that yet. We're not. Nobody has broken the band up yet. Yet. Oh my goodness! Don't say that.
The thing with us, I don't know about you guys, but Ron and I it's comical. Our brains are just wired completely differently. So I think we will always have our own investigations.
Yeah.
Like I'm working on some open-ended art projects. I don't know where they're going or what they're doing, but they're good and they have purpose, and then they're going to lead somewhere. But that for you,
and it's okay if they don't.
Yeah,
like,
and it's fine.
Yeah.
I'm just.
But we're those people that like if we were doing a team building exercise, and you're folding a sheet. And you know, when your instinct is to go like this and the other one's instinct is to go the long way, like we're the people, like we, oh my God, a 3-legged race with a potato sack we're hilarious. So like it's in the beauty and the comedy and our collaboration is how awkward we are with each other. There's like we expect it now. So like the thing that works is that we don't work on, like if it just doesn't really work, if you put it on paper, you'd be like, they're a nightmare. Like these two are a total nightmare, but we're kind of not, like it kind of makes sense. Like it's
why do you want somebody really that thinks like you and agrees with you?
Yeah, like that's not a thing. That's for us, that's not a thing.
Hopefully everyone will come back and see the amazing new work that you're creating for our next show, right? This doesn't apply to that.
No, this doesn't apply. Well, the thing is, it always resolves. That's the thing, Mary. It always turns out. And even when we
enough times, right?
Well,
it always
kind of always does.
And then we stand back and we laugh.
And we're like, well, that was very painful. and you know, it's like we want a timeout, but like there isn't a timeout, and so you just kind of roll into the next thing. And I think that we just try as hard as we can to just like, this is funny. Like if you look at our dogs looking at us, figuring it out, it's kind of like I try to put myself in the position of like watching us navigate what we're doing, but I can't imagine it any other way. Like, I think if we were being really honest, it would be sort of strange if everything was just kind of like not fits and we're fits and starts. He's fits and I'm starts. He starts and I'm fits.
So I
And
had one more question from the audience for Stephan and Mary. What's going to happen when Maddie and Emmett go off to college?
Well, they've already kind of, they're less and less part of the work, so we've been weaning our way apart from each other. Usually the way that they will agree to work with us now is if we pay them, which we're fine to do. So, but yeah, no, our work's just changing and evolving, and so they're less and less integral to it, and so it's just growing as they grow.
And there was a moment in our practice several years ago where, this question came up and we kind of stopped and we said, wait a minute, are we, there's so many wonderful artists out there that are specifically, talking about maybe youth or childhood or, adolescence or some that kind of theme. And we asked ourselves, was that what we were doing, or was it simply that, and I hope this sounds the right way, but they were a resource, that was, a hand's reach away.
Well, they were part of our landscape.
They were part of our landscape.
So,
and when they leave, we're going to start making work about them not being here and it being alone. And we've started, our parents have been elderly and we've been taking care of them. And we've started to think about that kind of, with the duties and the responsibilities, and that has started to kind of seep into what our household has been. And so the new work that we're doing is along that. So it's not so much specific about that they're these two people that have to be in the work, but more that at that window of time, they were in the landscape.
Yeah, and what are we kind of reflecting on and reflecting back in our work?
If your practice is really about your own life, your life changes and evolves, and it will continue to reflect that and different characters. I mean, obviously they're always part of your family, but they may have different roles. But don't anyone tell Holiday that their kids were paid for doing studio work, because we will keep that a secret, so you never have to pay her. No. No, I should say that Emmett and Maddie came to New Jersey when we opened their show, because we did a performance night where the family performed, and they were tremendously good sports, I have to say, for teenagers. But
well, and then it goes, our daughter Madeline wants to go up to school and she loves New York, and she goes, I'm going to go up to school there and I'm going to leave. And then without missing a beat, we're like, oh, so we'll follow you up there and we'll stay, and we're going to make this,
now we have a place to stay.
This performance piece about, transitions and empty nest, and we could stay there for 6-7 months, and a residence.
Like boundaries.
Yeah, right.
The blood drains from her face, and she's
like lock the doors.
So, but it's that.
Now there's COVID, so she can school from home forever, right?
Right.
New York is shut down.
Yeah.
well, we could go on forever, I think, talking about all of this. It's so much fun, but we've probably already overstayed our allotted time. Sarah, did you have anything else to add, or?
No, I just want to say thank you all so much. What an amazing group to have together. We're really honored, and we're excited to close out your show, Stephan and Mary, and to see your work in our museum as well. DARNstudio and Ghost of a Dream upcoming this year. So,
and I should also mention that Elizabeth Duffy, who was one of the people who asked a question is also in that show. So lots of really interesting artists. I hope you'll all check back about that.
Yeah, and we'll have artist talks and a lot of programming to go with that.
Great.
So stay tuned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
See you soon, Ghost of a Dream.
Yeah, we'll see you Friday, Ghost of a Dream.
Sounds great.
Bye.
Stay well.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.